Jace Crane stepped off the transfer shuttle and into the shadowed hall of the Obsidian Station. His heart beat fast beneath the tailored jacket he wore. Woody was a man used to getting what he wanted, but today's prize felt like the last piece of a puzzle he did not fully understand. The station's curved walls glowed with soft light, and distant voices echoed through the corridors. His steps were measured and quiet, but inside he trembled. This was the moment he had waited for across countless auction bids and whispered deals. He had bought what he thought was a submissive alien love slave. But he did not yet know the truth of what he had purchased. The auction room was vast, with transparent floors showing the stars below. Guests sat in high-backed chairs, their faces hidden behind masks of glass or metal. Each noble family or wealthy collector spoke in low tones. Jace felt the weight of their eyes as he passed. He had ridden a sky car here from the docking bay, leaving behind the comfort of his home ship, the Morning Star. He reminded himself that he was in control. He reminded himself that he had paid more credits than any bidder before him. Yet under the mask of confidence, his own doubts flickered. A chime sounded, soft and clear. All chatter hushed into silence. Goblets filled with spiced wine lowered from above, floating on tiny hover plates. A tall platform in the center rose slowly, carrying a veiled figure. The hush deepened into a tight coil of anticipation. Jace inhaled bitter air and clenched his gloved hands. He pictured the moment when the veil would lift, when the alien would bow her head and follow his every command. He pictured a blank stare and obedient movements. He pictured power. Across the room, the auctioneer's voice rang out, smooth and even. He spoke names, homeworlds, and bloodlines. He spoke of the alien's beauty, her youth, and her promise of devotion. Each word felt like a hammer striking in Jace's chest. He did not hear the bids that followed. He only heard the echo of his own ambition, when the final offer was called and the hammer fell. Jace saw the corners of someone's mask fight to hide a smile at his success. He nodded once, cold and assured. She was his now. The platform reached its peak, and the veil slipped away. Jace's breath caught in his throat. The alien stood tall and still, her skin glowing faintly in silver-blue light. She had no chains, no sign of fear. Her long hair rippled like silk in a gentle breeze that did not exist. Her eyes were large and calm, like still pools reflecting distant stars. Instead of bowing her head, she lifted it and met his gaze.
Ah!
Her lips curved into a graceful smile that spoke both welcome and challenge. A silence heavier than any chain fell across the audience. Jace's plan had been to show ownership, to flaunt his new possession. Instead, he found himself frozen by her quiet strength. He leaned forward, as if she might vanish in the instant he blinked. The room waited for a sign of her resistance, but she did nothing rash. She simply stood, the very image of dignity. In that moment, something in Jace shifted. He felt awe ripple through his bones, a strange warmth he thought he had forgotten. When at last he forced himself to step onto the platform, every footfall felt loud to his own ears. He stood beside her, shorter and human in his fine suit. He extended a hand, expecting her to lower her eyes. She placed her slender palm in his, with perfect gentleness. He felt her pulse, calm and steady under his fingertips. No fear, no trembling, only grace. He swallowed hard, wondering what he had really bought at all. In that quiet union of two hands, he sensed the first stirrings of a bond he could not command by credits or threats, a bond born of wonder and mutual respect. Jace Crane realized that this auction had changed him forever. Jace Crane guided Lyra through the polished corridors of the Morning Star, his heart still racing from their first meeting. He led her to a spacious chamber with soft lighting and smooth walls. "Sit," he said, pointing to a low bench. Lyra glanced at him, then at the bench. She bent her long legs and lowered herself gently, her posture elegant. Jace felt a swell of pride and wonder. She obeyed, but she did it with her own grace. Next, Jace held out a small metallic ball. "Bounce," he said simply.
Oh.
Lyra took the ball and let it drop. It hummed as it touched the floor and rolled away. Lyra watched it carefully, then tapped it with her fingertip. The ball leapt back to her hand. She returned it to Jace with a soft click. He smiled, clapping once. He realized she understood more than he gave her credit for. For hours, Jace tested simple commands. Turn, look, and sing. Lyra honored each word, yet she made each action her own. When he said sing, she lifted her head, closed her eyes, and began a soft melody in her alien tongue. The notes felt like moonlight dancing on water. Jace's chest tightened. He pressed stop, and she fell silent, waiting patiently. He played back the recording of her song and stared at her with awe. Then Jace tried to teach her English. He wrote the word star on a holopad and pointed up through the window at the bright pinpricks in the darkness.
Ow.
Lyra's silver eyes followed the motion. She looked back at the word and repeated it softly. Star. The sound was gentle, but clear. Jace's breath caught. He rode home and showed her a holomage of a green planet. She spoke it. Home. Her voice held a tiny tremor, as if she missed something dear. Lyra began to explore the rest. Of the ship alone, Jace watched her from a small viewport. She moved with confidence, her feet silent on the smooth floor. She paused at the hydroponic garden, brushing her fingers over the leaves. The plants glowed softly under the grow lights. She knelt, ran her palm over a leaf, and closed her eyes. Jace wondered what memories this tiny patch of green stirred in her heart. That night, Jace returned to his cabin and found a small, glowing flower laid on his pillow. Its petals shone with a pale blue light. He picked it up, curious. No note, no words, just the flower. His throat tightened. He pressed the blossom to his cheek, feeling its warmth. A silent gift from Lyra. He placed it in a clear vase filled with water. He knew then that she was not just obeying commands. She was showing him kindness. Over the next days, Lyra and Jace spent hours in the holoroom. He showed her images of Earth cities, forests, and oceans. She watched with wonder, pointing to scenes and murmuring words. Jace asked her about Viridia. She hesitated, then displayed a series of vivid holoclips, vast green forests, silver rivers, and tall, crystalline structures. She watched them with pride in her eyes. Jace saw the longing in her face and felt a deep ache in his chest. One afternoon, Jace sat with Lyra under the stars in the observation dome. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She turned to him, her silver eyes bright. She laid her slender hand over his, and for a moment, neither spoke. The silence was warm. Jace realized he was no longer testing commands or studying an alien specimen. He was learning from a friend Dan, equal with her own thoughts and feelings by. The end of the week, Lyra spoke English in short sentences. I see your world, she said one morning. It is beautiful. Jace felt tears prick his eyes. She smiled, the corners of her lips lifting in a bright curve. He laughed softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. In that simple moment, he understood that this bond could not be bought or sold. It was built from shared wonder and respect, a new beginning neither of them could have predicted. Jace Crane spent the afternoon planning a special dinner for Lyra. He chose the finest dishes from Earth's greatest chefs, tender roasted vegetables, soft bread, warm from the oven, and sweet fruit that glowed like tiny lamps in the low light. He set a long table by the wide window of the dining chamber, where the black sky was dotted with stars. He placed polished silver plates and smooth crystal glasses on a cloth of deep blue. As he worked, his heart beat like a drum. He worried that the meal might be too strange for her. He wondered if she would taste each dish with fear or disgust, and he hoped she would see his care. He wanted this evening to be a moment of true sharing, not an exercise in control. When Lyra entered the chamber, she paused at the table's edge. Her silver eyes caught the soft gleam of candles and the glow of fruit. She wore a simple gown of white fabric that fell in gentle folds. Jace took her hand and guided her to her seat. He watched her carefully, expecting her to bow her head. Instead, she sat with her back straight, her shoulders relaxed. She looked at each dish as if it were a new world to explore. He leaned forward and offered her a piece of roasted vegetable. She closed her eyes, breathed in the warm scent, and then took a small bite. Her eyes opened in surprise and delight. A gentle sound like a quiet song escaped her lips. Lyra sampled each course slowly. When she reached the fruit, she picked up a glowing berry and held it out to Jace. He blinked. Then she gently placed half the berry on his plate. Jace's breath caught. He had expected compliance, not kindness. He looked into her calm eyes and saw no fear, only the desire to share. He smiled, the first real smile he had felt in weeks. He lifted his glass and said, "Two new friends." She tilted her head, returned the smile with perfect grace, and tapped her glass faintly against his. The wine inside glimmered like liquid starlight as they ate. Jace found himself telling Lyra stories of his childhood, of green fields on Earth, of the bright sun that warmed his face, of the laughter of friends at simple gatherings. Lyra listened, her head tilted slightly, her eyes soft. When he paused, she described a Viridian festival where music floated on the wind and people danced under bioluminescent trees. Her voice was gentle, rich with memories he could almost feel. Jace realized that each story was a gift, shared freely between two beings who had once stood apart. He felt warmth bloom inside him, a warmth brighter than any star outside. After the last course, Jace rose and moved to the window. He touched the cool glass and looked out at the silent vastness. Lyra followed him and placed a hand on his arm. He turned and saw her silver eyes reflecting his own wonder. He felt a surge of emotion, gratitude for this moment, surprise at how quickly his heart had opened, and hope for the bond they were building. He squeezed her hand lightly, and she smiled back, a little shy but full of light. That night, Jace walked back to his quarters feeling changed. The dinner had not been a test of power, but a meeting of souls. He thought of the shared berry, of Lyra's gentle smile, of the stories exchanged under the watchful stars. He understood now that true connection sprang from respect and kindness, not from credits or contracts. As he lay in bed, he imagined a future where they explored new worlds together, learning from each other. In his mind, the table by the window became a symbol of hope, a place where two strangers became friends, and where a human and an alien found common ground in simple acts of sharing and care. Late at night, Jace woke suddenly. Soft light glowed under his door, and he heard gentle footsteps echoing in the corridor. Curious, he rose from his bed and followed the sound. The ship was quiet, its engines humming like a distant lullaby. Jace moved silently, barefoot on the cold floor. He didn't want to startle her, but he needed to know where she went when she thought no one was watching. He found her near the center of the ship in the hollow room. The door was half open, and inside the space glowed with soft green light. Jace stepped closer and froze. Lyra stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by tall trees and silver rivers. The projection was perfect. Forests swayed gently, and glowing birds flew overhead. It was her world, Viridia. She had recreated it from memory. She stood still, eyes closed, arms lifted toward a soft breeze that didn't exist. Her lips moved silently, speaking to the wind or maybe to memories. Jace watched her and felt a heavy knot in his chest. He had never seen her this peaceful before. There was something sacred about how she stood, tall, proud, and full of longing. She opened her eyes and turned. She didn't look surprised to see him. Instead, she offered him a small nod and beckoned him to enter. He stepped into her memory world, feeling the grass beneath his feet, hearing the soft sound of distant music. She guided him through glowing trees and paused beside a crystal pond. "Home," she said quietly. "I remember." Jace looked into the pond's reflection. Two of them stood side by side, human and Viridian. So different, yet here they both belonged. "You miss it," he said softly. She nodded once. "Yes. But here," she placed a hand over her heart. "I keep it with me." Jace's throat tightened. He wanted to give her more than comfort. He wanted to give her freedom, something she hadn't truly known since the day she was sold. The next morning, Jace entered the ship's control room and gave an order. "Change the light cycle. Match it to Viridia's sun." "Confirmed," the AI replied. He walked to the garden dome and reprogrammed the plants to grow bioluminescent flowers, like the ones from her world. The work took hours, but he didn't. Mind? When he returned to Lyra's quarters, she looked around in wonder. The walls glowed with soft green light. Gentle wind sounds drifted through hidden speakers. A soft scent of sweet leaves filled the air. Lyra turned slowly, eyes wide, her hand brushing the glowing petals. Then she looked at Jace. She didn't speak, but she didn't have to. Her eyes were full of emotion. Gratitude, wonder, and something deeper. Trust. That evening, they sat on the garden bench together. Jace handed her a tablet filled with earth. Music. She listened to each tune carefully, head tilted in thought. Then she touched his arm and said, "Now you hear mine." She began to hum, and the soft melody wrapped around them like a dream. Jace closed his eyes and let it carry him. The song had no words, but he understood it. It was about home, loss, courage, and hope. When the song ended, they sat in silence for a long time. "I didn't expect any of this," Jace whispered. "I thought I was buying a servant. But I found someone extraordinary." Lyra looked at him and reached for his hand. "I didn't expect kindness," she replied. "But I found it." In that quiet moment, under glowing trees and a painted sky, Jace knew things had changed. This was no longer about ownership. It wasn't about who had the power. It was about something more human than control, compassion. And in Lyra, he saw a strength that came not from force, but from dignity. And in himself, he saw a man who no longer wanted to own anything, only to understand, to care, and to become someone worthy of her trust. Each day aboard the Morning Star felt different now. Jace no longer saw Lyra as someone he had bought. He saw her as someone he had met, someone who had quietly changed everything inside him. The ship once felt like a floating palace, filled with luxury and silence. Now it was alive with soft laughter, gentle music, and the sound of two souls learning from each other. Jace spent his mornings adjusting the virtual forest in the hollow room. He added new sounds, rustling leaves, distant water, and the hum of alien insects Lyra described from memory. In return, Lyra sat with him in the evenings, reading earth poems and drawing her own versions in soft silver ink. Her writing was slow and careful, each letter formed with patience and curiosity. Jace would sit beside her, watching, sometimes correcting gently, sometimes just smiling at her concentration. One afternoon, Jace taught her how to paint. He brought out small bottles of glowing pigment and flat, smooth canvases. "Rules," he said, "just feelings." Lyra tilted her head, took the brush, and dipped it into the soft gold. She painted slow lines like waves flowing from her heart. By the end of the session, her painting was full of motion and color no shape he could name, but full of life. Jace painted too. He tried to show the stars as he saw them, and her eyes when she laughed. When he was done, he showed her his canvas with a shy smile. She stared at it for a long time, then reached out and touched the part where he had drawn her eyes. "Warm," she whispered. "Thank you." Each night Lyra explored more of the ship. She spent time in the library, looking through holograms. Of human stories and art, she loved tales of kindness, of lost people finding their way again. Her favorite was about a bird made of starlight who forgot how to sing until a lonely tree taught her. "That bird," she told Jace, "is me." Jace felt a deep ache when she said that. He had never wanted her to feel like something lost. All he wanted was to help her sing again. Lyra also began sharing more about Viridia. She spoke of how her people lived in harmony with their world, how every tree was planted with love, how no one ever claimed another's will. On Viridia, she said, "We don't say mine to people, we say with me if they choose." Simple phrase touched Jace deeply. He remembered how he had once introduced her as something he had bought. The memory made his chest feel heavy. "I was wrong," Jace said one evening, standing beside her in the garden dome. "I don't want to own you. I want you to stay with me, if you choose." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Then she gently placed her hand in his. "I stay," she said, "because I feel safe." That night, she left another glowing flower on his pillow. But this time, it wasn't just a gift. It was shaped into a tiny circle of Viridian symbol for trust. Days passed, and the bond between them grew. They no longer needed many words. Their Glances spoke of shared moments. Their silences were filled with peace. One morning, Jace found Lyra singing to the flowers in the garden dome. Her voice was strong, no longer just soft and cautious. Listened, eyes closed, letting her melody fill the room. It was the sound of healing, of choosing to bloom in a new world. In that moment, Jace knew something important. He hadn't saved her, she had saved him. One calm morning, as the morning star drifted through open space near a neutral trade route, a message flashed on the control panel. A government cruiser was approaching. Jace's heart dropped the moment he saw the seal. It was an inspection. Vessel from the Intergalactic Trade Authority, the same organization that punished illegal trafficking of intelligent life forms. Jace stood frozen. Though he hadn't mistreated Lyra, the truth still stung. She had arrived through an auction, purchased with credits like an object. Even if things had changed now, the records would still show her as his property.
Ow.
Fear curled in his stomach. If the inspectors discovered this, they might take her away or worse, punish him for holding her without formal clearance. Lyra found him pacing near the ship's window. She tilted her head and asked softly, "Something wrong?" Jace didn't know what to say. For the first time, he felt powerless. He looked into her calm eyes and whispered, "Inspectors are coming. They may think you're still not free." Lyra stayed quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Let me speak." Jace blinked. "What?" "I will speak," she said gently. "Let me show them who I am." Before he could answer, the ship's alarm signaled docking. The cruiser had arrived. Moments later, two officers stepped aboard, both tall, both wearing dark blue uniforms and sharp expressions. Jace greeted them with a polite nod, trying to stay calm. "We're here to inspect for compliance," one of them said. "Your registry shows a classless entity on board. Alien origin. Purchased at auction. Where is she?" Lyra stepped forward before Jace could reply. She stood tall, graceful as always, and placed one hand gently on her chest. "I am Lyra," she said clearly. Her voice was calm and confident. "I am not property. I am guest. I choose to stay here." The officers blinked, surprised by her clear speech. One of them turned to Jace. "She speaks trade common?" Jace nodded. "She's been learning. Everything you see, she helped create. She's not a servant. She's my friend." Lyra stepped closer to the officers. "On Viridia, we say with me, not mine. I stay with Jace because I feel safe. I am not owned. I am choosing to be here.
8.
Please don't take that choice away from me." Her words were soft but strong. The two officers glanced at each other, uncertain. One of them pulled out a scanner, checked the records, then looked at Lyra again. "Do you wish to register your status as independent?" the officer asked. Lyra nodded. "Yes." The officer tapped a few keys and looked at Jace. "From now on, she's legally free. You won't be charged, since no harm was found. But be careful. These things can go very differently." They turned and left without another word. The door closed behind them, and silence fell across the room. Jace let out a shaky breath. "You were amazing." Lyra turned to him with a small smile. "I spoke truth. That is all." He looked at her with awe. He had worried she would be scared or quiet, but instead she stood tall and proud. She didn't need saving, she had saved herself. Later, as they sat under the stars in the observation dome, Jace reached out and gently took her hand. "I didn't know what would happen today," he said. "I was so afraid of losing you." Lyra looked at him. "You didn't lose me. You gave me a voice, and I used it." He nodded, eyes wet but smiling. "I've never met anyone like you." She smiled too, soft and warm. "And I've never met anyone who listened." That night, the ship felt different, not because of fear, but because of freedom. For the first time, Lyra's presence on the Morning Star wasn't written in data records or hidden behind old rules. It was written in truth. And in Jace's heart, something new began to grow, something deeper than guilt, stronger than fear. It was respect. It was love. Weeks passed slowly, like soft waves in open space. The Morning Star no longer felt like just a ship, it felt like a home. The walls that once echoed with silence now carried music and quiet laughter. Jace and Lyra spent their days together, not as owner and property, but as equals, as companions, as something more. Each morning, Jace would find Lyra in the garden dome, humming softly as she touched the glowing leaves. Sometimes she would sing the songs of Viridia, filling the ship, with melodies that wrapped around the walls like warm blankets. Jace often sat nearby, eyes closed, letting her voice calm the thoughts in his mind. He no longer felt guilt when he looked at her, he felt wonder. One quiet evening, Jace entered the observation deck and found Lyra waiting. She held something. Wrapped in soft cloth, she stood under the stars, her silver eyes glowing gently. When she saw him, she smiled and held out the bundle. "For you," she said softly. Jace opened it slowly, carefully. Inside was a small living seed, pale green and pulsing faintly with light. He looked up, surprised. "What is it?" Lyra stepped closer. "It's a gift we only give once. A seed means I trust you, but if we give it to someone not from our world, it also means I believe in us." Jace didn't speak for a moment. The meaning was clear. This was not just a token, it was a symbol of everything they had built together: respect, healing, hope. He held the seed close and nodded slowly. "Then I will plant it and care for it." Always they walked together to the garden dome. In the center, Jace knelt and dug a small patch of soil. Lyra placed the seed gently inside. Together, they covered it and poured soft blue water from a glass bottle. The soil shimmered under their hands. As they stood, Lyra looked at him and whispered, "We are not what we were." Jace met her gaze. "No, we're something new." That night, under the stars, they sat side by side. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The silence between them was full of meaning. It was full of comfort. Later, Jace returned to his room and opened a drawer. Inside were old documents records from the auction, receipts, lists of items purchased, took a deep breath, then deleted every file with Lyra's name on it. Not to erase her past, but to free it. She didn't belong to that page anymore. The next morning, a soft glow came from the garden. The seed had begun to sprout. A tiny leaf reached upward, glowing with the same soft light Lyra carried in her soul. Jace stood beside it, and Lyra joined. He gently took her hand, and together they watched the first life from Viridia bloom aboard the Morning Star. It was more than just a plant. It was proof that trust could grow, that kindness could take root, that even in a cold galaxy filled with rules and ownership and silence, something new and beautiful could rise. Jace looked at Lyra and saw not a slave, not a guest, not a mystery, but someone he could walk beside. Forever, and in her quiet smile, he saw the same hope shining back at him.